Okay, hey guys, it's me, Hafiz, again, back to cover another session about IELTS. So this time around, I will be covering uh, about IELTS reading section. So we're going to actually take a look at some of the IELTS question, as you guys can already see on my screen that I've already prepared, right? Now, in the previous session, we have covered pretty much like the overview of both IELTS academic and general training. So starting today and moving onwards, we are going to focus more on just making sure that we actually get to see some of the questions directly. Okay, oops, sorry, I haven't shown my camera. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, so we will try to cover both reading, academic, and general training if we have times. Okay, so hopefully we'll have time and we can take a look at basically, how those two differentiate, right? Okay, but before we actually get to the question, I would like to cover a couple of pointers just for everyone to remember, whoever is watching right now, right? And those pointers are pretty much tips. You can take them as tips. So first things first. So let me write this down for everyone. Okay. The first thing that you do when it comes to IELTS reading, whether it be for academics or general, right? The first thing that you should always remember is that focus more on the question, right? Especially when it comes to the IELTS academic tests. Because don't forget, IELTS is an English language testing system. So the test is testing you on your English capability. So it's not testing you on some science knowledge or your knowledge on magazines, etc. Right? So it's the most essential thing when it comes to the reading section is just your ability to answer those questions. That's it, full stop, right? So focus more on the question, and we'll get to the point where I show you like what that means exactly. Number two, right? Be very mindful of oops for that. Be very mindful of synonyms and paraphrasing, because that's, as I've mentioned in the previous session, it's something that IELTS really like to do. They like to play around with keywords. They like to trap you into thinking that, oh, the answer might be somewhere along this line because I see familiar or similar words that are also used in the question. So you get easily trapped when it comes to those kind of tricks, right? So be very mindful of synonyms and paraphrasing. And number three, right? Um, Pay attention to your time and speed. So one of the essential skill, as mentioned in the previous session, is skimming and scanning when it comes to reading, of course. So one of the practices that you would need to do quite frequently, be exposed to it, is just your reading speed and that ability to catch the information you need. It's not as easy as it sounds. In fact, it's quite difficult. You would need to kind of be exposed to a lot of reading passages, right? And in that regards, you also have to make sure that your mind, your brain, is accustomed to absorbing whatever information you're trying to find in at the speed that you are reading. So if you go like blah 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 blah, wait, I just noticed I read that word. That's the information that I need. You stop, you check, and you kind of like decide, is that the answer that I need? If yes, you take it out. You don't have to read any further, right? One thing that you should avoid at all costs when it comes to reading is trying to thoroughly understand everything in the reading passage. That's a big mistake in my experience, because as I've mentioned in the beginning, IELTS is not a test about your knowledge on the reading subjects. it's your English knowledge that you're trying to test, right? So you're not being asked to understand the entire thing. And especially when it comes to the academics, don't panic when you're given a topic that you're completely unfamiliar with. I mean, if you kind of take a look at the sample questions that I already have open, this talks about bats, right? I'm an English teacher. I have probably zero knowledge about bats apart from, baby bats probably cute. Other than that, I have zilch knowledge. So in that context, right, I have to be very careful not to panic, seeing that, oh, I'm being tested about bats. Should I know what bats are like? Should I know how they behave in certain circumstances, et cetera, et cetera, right? So it's more crucial to just make sure that you're reading very carefully and only focusing on what you need to find. Okay, all right. Now, if we already have those 3 points, right, and it will take time for especially people who are new to this test, people who are just starting to prepare, you have to make sure that you are first exposed to a lot of reading passages. Of course, at the level of the test that you are taking, if you're taking a general training, right, the level is slightly lower. If you're taking academic, it's a little bit higher, right? Okay, so if we go back to point number one, focus more on the question. So what that means is, right, once you are into IELTS reading section, do not read the passage first. I have seen so many students, the minute that they are given the test paper, right, or when they do a mock, they would try and read the entire passage first. Sometimes they would assume that it's skimming and scanning as well, right? But it's actually not an efficient way. You do not need to read the reading passage first. What you should actually do is go straight to the questions, right? Go straight to the questions. Look at the questions. What are they asking? And basically spends a little bit of time in figuring out what information you need for each question, right? Now that brings us to the first part of the talking point when we're discussing any test basically, and that is the question type, right? Now, of course, I'm not going to be covering specific questions type per session, right? I'm going to be covering it basically per reading passage. So right now we are focusing on Let's Go Bats. There will be a variety of question types for that reading passage, and we're going to try and cover all of them. So with every reading session that I have in these live sessions, right, we are basically going to cover all the questions that are related to that reading passage. Okay, so let's take a look at the first question type and then talk a little bit about it and then try to answer it in a way that's the most efficient, the most effective. Okay, so first things first is that the first question type, question 1 to 5, you have to remember to read the question very carefully, right? Now, this one is pretty straightforward. Write the correct letter A to E in boxes 1 to 5 on your answer sheet. But in some questions, right, the instructions can be a lot more specific. Like you can only write one word. And to those who have taken the IELTS test, right, that's pretty familiar to you guys. So it's very important that you read the question very carefully. Right? So the first question type that we are going to cover is basically which paragraph contains the following information. So in this type of question, you will be given a couple of points, sentences, or even phrases, um, and you have to identify where that information lies in the paragraph. And usually the question, the reading passage itself will be divided into different paragraphs, like such as this one, right? There's paragraph A, B, C, and D. So you have pretty much to kind of pinpoint where that information lies in this entire reading passage. Now, first instinct for anybody new is usually, um, well, I'm just gonna read the information that I'm looking for, and then read the entire reading passage and see, where I might find that, or where I feel I might find that. Now, that is actually not a good plan. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to kind of alleviate the burden a little bit and try to highlight some keywords in the questions, right? Because the question will contain words that will help you funnel uh, basically where you should be looking. Right. So let's take a first question as a sample. Right. So in the first question, they ask examples of wildlife other than bats, which do not rely on vision to navigate by. Right. And if you are someone new to this, you're gonna go like, okay, I'm just gonna memorize the whole phrase and try to remember that while I'm reading the reading passage. What you should actually do is just memorize some of the keywords, right? Keywords that is quite specific to the point that it will kind of eliminate any paragraph that does not contain it, because this will help you skim and scan a lot faster. All right. So let's say we take a look at examples of wildlife other than bats. Right. So what does that mean? Wildlife other than bats. So we're looking for an animal, right? We have to find another animal other than bats. So what you want to do is that, okay, find an animal basically. So the keyword is not mentioned here in regards to what animal you're looking for, but you need to find words that contain another animal other than bats. That's number one, right? Number two is do not rely on vision to navigate. So you can highlight do not rely, right? Vision, and maybe to navigate, you need to try to at least highlight the three terms, right? And that usually makes it quite obvious that you probably would need to highlight either all the nouns or the verbs in that phrases. But on in certain cases, you actually would not highlight all the words, right? In some cases, because the phrase is quite long, three usually is more than enough. So afterwards, what do you need to do after you highlight, like in this manner? What do you need to do? First things first, right? Make sure that you keep in mind that these keywords won't be exactly the same in the reading passage. So you will not find it written the exact same way as in the reading passage, right? You're finding an animal, you want to find another animal, but the other key passage, right, like do not rely. That is in verb form, in an action form. In the reading passage, you might need to be aware that there's also words like independent, right, or self-dependent. Any of those kind of words that like is paraphrasing this key word, but does, is not changing the meaning. Okay, and then when we say vision, for example, right, and, other phrases, words that we might use similarly is like eyes, sight, etc., etc. Navigate as well, right? Navigate, find direction, steer, finding ways, etc. Right? So IELTS will try and paraphrase it, and occasionally, you will find similar words, but it ends up not being in the paragraph that is actually the answer. Right? So let's kind of go through the whole process right now. So we've highlighted the keywords, right? Find an animal, do not rely, vision, navigate. Now let's take a look at the paragraph themselves. So what you want to do, right, is you want to find the paragraph that contains all of those keywords. So you will find a name of another animal, you will find a word or a phrase in one form or another. That means do not rely or independent. You will find vision as well, or navigate. Right now, all you need to do is basically find at least three of them, right? Usually, automatically, you'll find the fourth if you find all three. Now, a lot of the times, this is not 100% of the time, but I would confidently say at 80% of the time, you will find all of those keywords very close together, right? Either in the same sentence, right? If it's in the same sentence, you hit the jackpot. But occasionally you will find it in separate sentences, but they're very close. Either they're right next to each other in different sentences, right? Um, or they're just like one sentence apart. So that's very important to always remember, right? You're not going to find the keywords in like completely different places, disconnected from one another. Remember, these keywords are connected directly to one another, so you have to find them in the same nature in the reading passage, right? So let's do a quick read of paragraph A, right? So bats have a problem. So we find an animal. It's bats, but we're looking for other than bats, right? How to find their way around in the dark. They hunt at night and cannot use light to help them find their prey and avoid obstacles. Okay, so they use light to help find prey. So this is kind of similar to navigate, but this is not navigate to find the way. This is to find a prey. So be careful. That's a very simple thing. A lot of people would go like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna fall for that." But just by increasing the complexity a little bit, a lot of you would probably easily fall for a little misinformation, right? And avoid obstacles. You might say that this is a problem of their own making. One day they could avoid simply by changing their habits and hunting by day, but the daytime economy is already heavily exploited by other creatures such as birds, etc. Okay, we see that there is a bird, right? A different animal. It doesn't really say, like, well, bats are also birds, right? Like, let's pretend because we're not biology experts, we're not animal experts, so birds might be a different animal, but again, we did highlight a couple of keywords, so we have to make sure that all the keywords are there. So up to this point, we don't really see anything else, right? Do not rely, vision, etc. Right? Uh, Given that there is a living to be made at night, and given the alternate daytime trades are roughly occupied, natural selection has favored bats to make a go of the night hunting trade. It is probable that the nocturnal trades go way back in the ancestry of all mammals. In the time when dinosaurs, okay, there's also dinosaurs, but very not likely that's the animal we're looking for, dominated the daytime uh, economy. Our mammalian ancestors probably only managed to survive. They found ways of scraping living at night only after. Okay, so we don't really see that all the keywords we're looking for are there, right? It's pretty much non-existent in the first paragraph, apart from another animals. There was a word that might have led to navigate, but that's about it. So A is definitely not the answer, right? So you want to avoid any paragraph that literally does not have all the keywords that you highlighted in the question. You really want to find all those keywords, right, very close together in the same paragraph, right, or even in the same sentence. All right, let's take a look at paragraph B. So we have bats have an engineering problem. How to find their way? Okay, we have find their way. So before we had find prey. Now this is find their way. It's very much what navigate means, right? So yeah, pretty much paraphrase. And find their prey in the absence of light. Bats are not the only creatures, not the only creatures. So wildlife other than, as you can see, the structure is like almost similar, right? It's they're not using word to word, right? They're not kind of copying it exactly. They're slightly tweaking it, right? Since this is like the first part of the reading section, it's not as tricky, right? But as you kind of go deeper into the questions and go to the other reading sections, it might get more trickier, or do expect it actually to get more trickier, right? To face this difficulty, they obviously the night flying insects that they prey on must find their way about somehow. Deep sea fish, okay, we found another animal. Whales, we found another animal, have little or no light by day or by night. Fish and dolphins, another animal. So a lot of animals in this paragraph that live in extremely muddy water cannot see because although there's light, it is obstructed and scattered by the dirt in the water. Plenty. Okay, so we have a lot of animals, wildlife other than, right, do not rely. Okay, well, we have not seen do not rely just yet, but we did find vision, right, and navigate, right? So of course, this is talking about visions because this is in the absence of light, right? So bats are not the only creatures to face difficulty today. So we pretty much have at least three keywords in that paragraph, right? So this is very likely going to be your answer for question one, right? Because we found at least three of them. Now, if you go to any question and you highlighted three keywords, and all those three keywords are found very close together, right? That is going to be most likely your answer, right? And the way to check it is, of course, right, by trying to just answer the remaining questions, right, and make sure that the formula is consistent, that you kind of find the paragraph with the most keywords, right? If you highlighted four, you found three, that's pretty good. But if you say highlighted three but only found one, it's very risky to choose that as your answer, right? Now, you don't even have to really understand the context of the reading passage, in terms of its substance. Which paragraph contained "I always stuck in this"? Right, no problem, right? Stay tuned. We're going to cover a lot of questions in the reading practice, right? Hopefully, we'll cover enough. Because in the reading, right, is it Ranjit Kaur? You have to kind of make sure to make the most out of it, because you can check your answers, right? Like how we are doing right now. We're checking our answer because, like I said in the beginning, in case you missed it, is that we want to find the paragraph where all the keywords are very close together, and you can see that they're pretty much close together. They're like next to each other in terms of the sentence that they're in, right, or that they're part of. And like I said, sometimes you will find them in the same sentence. Right? If you do, that makes it a whole lot easier to be very confident with your answer, right? So it's more likely that it's very likely that question one, your answer is B, right? So let's try that formula out again. You're not able to understand the paragraph sometimes, so the best advice that has ever been given to me is that change your mindset a little bit and try not to understand the entire paragraph. Literally just focus on understanding the question, find the keywords that you need, and find it in the paragraph, right? So just to repeat the process, Ranjit, right? You can see that we highlighted a couple of keywords here. Wildlife other than bats, do not rely, vision, navigate. Now, you don't need to understand that there are other animals who have other features in order to find their way. Maybe they use hypersonic, I don't know, I'm making it up, but just as an example, right? You don't have to understand all of that. All you have to understand is, okay, we're looking for an animal that is independent, and it has something to do with how they see or how they find their way. And we went to paragraph B, right? We highlighted find their way here. Find their way is exactly the same as navigate, right? So that is usually the part where you do need to practice, where you identify how a word can be paraphrased. You identify synonyms, right? Because that is the English part. You're not going to be tested on the bats or the other animals part and what they're like, right? You're going to be tested on the vocabulary, right? So find their way is exactly the same as navigate. Absence of light, find their prey. Those are everything to do with vision, right? So a little bit of paraphrasing there. And we also found other animals. You got deep sea fish, whales, fish, and dolphins. We don't need to understand the remaining context of that paragraph. We don't need to understand, oh, fish and dolphins live in extremely muddy water. We don't even have to remember that. Just focus on finding those keywords, because if you found it, and you remember, the test will be in how accurate you are at finding them, right? If you are accurate, you did enough practice, you are exposed to enough reading passages, you're confident in matching those keywords together from the questions with the reading passage, right? You will be very confident with your answers as well. Okay, and in that regards, right, all you have to do is just keep on practicing, be exposed to more reading passages, be exposed to more vocabulary, because that is where the English challenge lies, not in the substance itself. And I've mentioned this in the previous session as well, right? When it comes to the academics reading part or general training part, don't focus on the substance, focus on the vocabulary, right? Because in the vocabulary is usually a lot more easier to understand than trying to understand the entire paragraph as a whole. So let's do another question, just for anyone who's currently watching can see, right? Number two, right? How early mammals avoided dying out? So we're basically going to do the same steps, right? First, highlight some keywords that might help us, right? How early mammals avoided dengue. So we're looking for paragraphs that talks about mammals, right? So either find the word mammals or a similar word. Now, since we are not scientists, very likely whoever takes this test are not scientists. We want to assume that when you see a scientific word like mammals, right, you would probably see it in the same form in the reading passage. So you don't have to worry too much about thinking, oh, this is a scientific word. I'm not really sure what the synonyms are. If it's a scientific word, a lot of the times it will be either written in the exact same way or only tweaked just slightly, right? So, for example, here, mammals, you'll highly likely find mammals in the same paragraph, right? Avoided dying out, right? So we can highlight the word avoid on its own and also dying out. Now, there's also how early, but that's pretty generic, right? Maybe it has something to do with dates, right? So maybe we want to specify that a little bit. So when we say early, all right, let's highlight that, and we want to find a date. So the paragraph must contain a date, for example, right? Or some form of time, not exactly a date, right? Okay, first things first. We talk about avoid. Okay, so or dying out. Okay, avoided dying out. So let's read again. You have to read from paragraph A, but if you have already chosen a certain paragraph to be an answer to one of your questions, you don't need to read that again, right? Because it's not, the answer won't be repeated twice. Okay, so starting again from paragraph A, bats have a problem, how to find the way. Now, as you kind of repeat reading them, you should get faster, right? You should get faster because some of them should stick in your head, so you don't need to worry too much about struggling to find information. Once you come around a second time or a third time. Okay, so let's quickly read paragraph A of obstacle message the problem of making because what's daytime purchase but given that there's living alternative mammals, natural selection bats, night hunting trade, it is probable trade ancestry of all mammals. Okay, we found mammals, right? So once you find one keyword, right, the next step that you need to do is try to, if you are the type of person to easily forget or become easily unsure, read one sentence before it and the sentence that where the keyword is at, right? So we found mammals here. Let's read one sentence before it. So I think it starts somewhere over here, given, right? So let's read that again. Given that there is a living to be made at night, and given the alternative daytime trades are fairly occupied, natural state have favored bets to make a go of the night hunting trade. Okay, no keywords are found there. It is probable that the dactylidae go way back in the ancestry of all mammals. All right, no other keywords found there. Read the next sentence. In the time, there we go. See, we're looking for some sort of time, right? Because how early time? In the time when dinosaurs dominated. Oh, there's another word for daytime. Right? There's another word for time, daytime. So in the same sentence, we found two words that indicate the earliness of a time. Our mammalian, another mammalian. Okay, mammals, mammalian, they are the same word. Basically, they're different formats, different shape, but they're the same word. Mammalian ancestors probably only managed to survive at all because they found ways of scraping living at night. So managed to survive. Now this is a demonstration of how the paraphrasing can be very significantly different, right? In paragraph B, it was pretty simple, right? They only say find their ways. In the question, it was navigate. But here we see in the question that it's written avoided dying out But in the reading passage, you can see that it says manage to survive. That's the same thing. Manage to survive, avoid dying out. That's the same thing, right? So it's paraphrased, quite significantly. So that is the kind of skills that you do need to practice. You need to identify that difference in words, in phrases, but realize that it still means the same thing, right? So the question asks how early mammals avoided dying out. In one sentence, we found the word for time, daytime. We found the word mammalian, and we found managed to survive. That is basically also the same as avoided dying out. So we found all the key words in one sentence. So the answer is A. Absolutely. This is a moment that we can go very confident, right? So for the second question, it's definitely A. We found all the keywords in one sentence, right? That's a jackpot, basically, right? If you find it in different sentences but close by, that's maybe you're not 100% sure, right? And you'll have to probably check a little bit more, right? But if it's in one sentence, be straight up confident. That's the answer, right? For this type of question, of course, right? And if we kind of try to do another question just to make sure, let's do the question with a longer sentence. Question 4, right? So we go with how a particular discovery has helped our understanding of bats. Okay, so we are looking for a particular discovery. So when we think about discovery, it might be also have to do something with invention, uncovering, etc., etc. Right? So it has helped our understanding of that, right, in one shape or another. So understanding an aspect of a bat, right? So we are looking for these three keywords, right? Again, in one form or another. So we already chose A, we already chose B. So now let's go to C and see if the answer is there. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit. Given the questions of how to maneuver in the dark, what solutions might an engineer consider? The first one that might occur to him is to manufacture light. So far, no keyword. To use a lantern or a searchlight. Fireflies and some fish, usually with the help of bacteria, have the power to manufacture their own light, but the process seems to consume a large amount of energy. Fireflies use their light for attracting mates. This doesn't require a prohibitive amount of energy. A male's tiny pinprick of light can be seen. Okay, so far, no keywords. We're gonna keep going. However, using a light to find one's way. Okay, now if you practice your reading quite well, right, one of the things that you should try and do is literally decide whether that paragraph will have the keywords that you need. So for example, in question 4, we are definitely looking for a paragraph about bats, right? Now if you kind of take a look to at paragraph C, we don't even see the word bats. Yeah, it's more focused on fireflies, deep sea fish, right? We don't see the word bats. Now, I think as Ranjit asked, like sometimes you struggle with understanding the substance of the paragraph, right, or of the entire reading passage. So again, you don't need to understand, right? You just need to know that this is about bats. But in paragraph C, it is not. So the moment that you're able to kind of quickly scan that paragraph and go, this has nothing to do with bats, skip it. Don't focus on it, right? And if we jump to paragraph D, is it about bats? Let's take a look. Do we see any word? Do we see any bats here? To Phantom Limb. Oh, we also don't see bats, right? This focus more on still the part of an engineer, right? And I think some sort of experiments, right? We don't really need to understand the entire thing. So let's go to paragraph E. The world know. Okay, we immediately see the word bats, right? So we know this paragraph most likely contained the word bats, right? Okay, so the sonar and radar pioneers didn't know it then, but all the world now knows that bats, or rather natural selection, working on bats, had perfected system tens of millions of years earlier, and the radar achieved feats of detection. Oh, okay. All right. Let's recap a little bit first. What was the keyword that we were looking for? What were the keywords? Sorry, that we were looking for. How a particular discovery, so we're looking for a discovery, help our understanding of bats. So, right. The sonar and radar pioneers didn't know, but all the world now knows that bats, or rather natural selection working on bats, had perfected the system 10 of millions of years earlier, right? And the radar achieves feats, okay, close to discovery, right? Feats, achievements, right? That can be considered a discovery of detection and navigation that would rather strike an engineer dumb with admiration. Okay. Uh, so is there any word that kind of indicate that this is helping? Oh yes, that would strike an engineer dumb with admiration. So it helped the engineer. Absolutely. It is technically incorrect to talk about bat radar since they did not use radio waves. It is sonar, but other mathematical theories of radar and sonar are very similar. Much of our scientific understanding, blah blah blah, of what bats are doing has come from applying radar theory to them, who was largely responsible for this. Oh, look at that. We actually found a specific word for discovery there, right? And we also found the word bats there, right? Who was largely responsible uh, for the discovery of sonar in bats, coined the term echolocation to cover both whether used by animals or human instrument, right? So this is definitely going to be the answer because we found all the keywords. We found two keywords in one sentence, and one more is kind of like sprinkled throughout the paragraph there, right? It's definitely a help to all the engineers. So particular discovery check, help check, understanding of bats check. So the answer for question number 4 is E. No doubt about that. All right. So that is one of the quickest way to find your answer for this reading for this type of question, right? And this trick, this technique of just focusing on keyword and not focusing too much on like what the collective topic is about is actually applicable to a lot of the questions, right? This will save you a lot of time. Now, when I showed you guys reading the passage, it took a little bit of time, and one of the practices that you should absolutely do is definitely improve your reading speed, right? Your ability to skim and scan. Now, thankfully for you in HSAT education, there are a couple of courses that will help you with that. They offer a lot of courses, right, with a lot of self-paced training. So you can go at your own speed. I mentioned this in the first session. You do not need to look at other people. You need to learn at your own pace. You have your own ability. You are distinct from everybody else, right? And in HSAT education, you can do that. You can achieve that. So please feel free to check the link in the description below and check out some of the courses that will absolutely be helpful for your IELTS preparation. And all of the course are money back guaranteed. So if you don't achieve your goal, money back guaranteed, no question asked, right? Feel free to check it out. Okay, so basically that is the whole gist of this session, right? Just trying to show you guys that when it comes to IELTS reading, we don't really need to stress too much. Now, we have a little bit of time, so I want to compare a little bit with IELTS general training. Now, as you know that when it comes to IELTS general training, there's really not a lot of differences, right? Apart from the reading passage itself, like the difficulty and what type it is. So in academics, of course, you will get academic reading passages. With IELTS general training, you will get something simpler. So in this case, this is like a statement or an announcement, right? Sometimes you get a magazine, etc., etc. So it's just a little bit easier, right? Just to show you, like the difference in difficulty a little bit. Okay, so we are going to cover a different type of question now. This is true, false, not given, right? I will cover this more extensively, especially for the academic section, right? Because true, false, not given is, I think, the question type that a lot of students get tricked into, right? Because it's sometimes difficult, especially to differentiate between false and not given, right? So I will make this brief, right? Hopefully, we'll still have time to cover one or two questions, right? When you choose true, right? You can see it says there, if the statement agrees with the information. What does that actually mean? If it's true, you will find the exact same information in the passage. Absolutely the same, right? Whether it's paraphrased, whether you find the synonyms, etc., right? You will find the same passage. Right? It won't be any different. If you find it to be false, if the statement contradicts the information, right? So you will see that a different essential information is given. So what does that mean, to be exact? Like if something contradicts. So I'll give you an example. If the question asks you like, um, Bill Gates discover Apple, right? Bill Gates discovered Apple. So if you look at the reading passage, right, and the reading passage says Steve Jobs was the first person to discover Apple, some way like that, then it's clearly false because you found a different information that is part of the essential of that question, right? I'll give you a sample in just a second, right? If it's not given, right, right, some keywords will be missing, basically. Like you will find the information to be non-existent, right? You will find a little bit of the information, but some of the keywords will be missing. So just to give you a taste, right, of what that's like, let's take a look at question one. Right? Customers should inform Eastern Energy of a change, right? So we're talking about customers should inform Eastern Energy, the company, of a change of address on arrival at their new home. Right? Change of address. Okay, we immediately find that it doesn't take long to kind of immediately see where the answer lies. Moving home, right? It has to be somewhere there. So please give as much notice as possible if you are moving home, right? We found it, moving home. Now it says here, change of address, inform on arrival. Does it say it's on arrival? No, it says as much notice as possible. So even earlier than that. So this is a clear contradiction. Like a different set of information is found, right? We found the other keywords, right? Change of address, new home, right? Etc. So one information is not missing. It's just that it's a completely different information. Right. Now, if we move on to the next question, customers are expected to read their own gas or electricity meter. Again, easy to find, meter reading, right? Expected to read their own gas or electricity meters, various types of meter ranging from external meters to new technology. Always read the meter from left to right, right? So yes, customers are expected. So you don't even really need to highlight keywords. It's gonna clearly tell you that that's the answer, right? You don't really have to extensively search or make sure, but you can check. It's still checkable, right? So there is no really any reason for you not to check at the end of the reading section when you're doing IELTS general training. Right. So this one, first question, is absolutely false. Right. The second question is true. Let's take a look at the third. It is now cheaper to use gas rather than electricity as a form of heating. So let's see the next part, energy efficiency line. If you like the advice on the efficient use of energy, right? Efficient use of energy, please call our energy efficiency line. Okay, now if you kind of take a look at that, none of these are actually mentioned here, right? It doesn't say anything to do with price. It doesn't say anything to do with gas or electricity. All they just say it's efficient use of energy. So you have a lot of keywords actually missing, right? When you come across that kind of statements, it's absolutely going to be not given, right? So you have to make sure that when you come across those types of questions, you absolutely check, right? If it's true, everything will be there. You got all the keywords, they are all connected, nothing is missing. If it's false, you find some keyword, but one of them at least will contain a contradictory information, at least one of them, right? It still talks about the same type of information. So for example, right, it says on question 1, it says on arrival, but in the reading passage we say as soon as possible, right? As much notice as possible. So not on arrival, that's obviously different. They are still the same type of information. It tells you when to notify the company when you're moving home. It tells you that time period, right? So it's the same type of information, but it's different, basically. That's what contradictory means, right? But if it's missing, the keywords are missing, right? Even if it's just one, like if there are two word keywords missing, that's absolutely obvious, right? So if keywords are missing, that's completely not given. Okay. All right. We're gonna try and cover more questions like this. So we will have the same exact session like this every day from Monday to Friday, right? So tomorrow it'll be at the same time as well. Um, and don't forget to check out the link below. And everything that I'm teaching you guys here will be covered as well in the courses that Age Education provides. So please do check them out. It's self-paced. You go at your own pace. And for the price itself, it's pretty affordable compared to a lot of companies I've seen, right? So, and you get unlimited access to it. And last but not least, it's money back guarantee. You don't succeed, you get your money back, right? So please check it out. All right. And if you have any questions, even after this streaming has ended, please feel free to leave a comment and a like. And I look forward to seeing more audiences in the next sessions, right? I'll try to cover every section in IELTS as much as possible. We'll go through different types of questions, different tips and tricks, right, to make sure that all of you guys, whoever is watching, can get the best result that you can possibly get. All right, that's it for my time. Thank you so much, guys, and have a good evening or morning, wherever you are from. All right, take care. Bye.